I was standing in my own living room, phone in my hand, when my daughter-in-law looked straight at me and said, "We got married yesterday."
We got married yesterday. We only invited special people.
I was standing in my own living room, phone in my hand, when my daughter-in-law looked straight at me and said, "We got married yesterday. We only invited special people." My fingers went cold first, then the cold climbed to my chest. The phone felt heavier than it should, like I was holding a brick instead of a little screen. My son kept his eyes down. She sat on the sofa I had bought them, crossed her legs, and smiled. I did not shout. I did not cry. It was a quiet kind of pain, the kind that presses on your lungs and asks, "Are you sure you want to breathe?" I had a pale pink dress waiting in my closet. I had shoes I never wear because I wanted to save them for something important. I had a sealed envelope with a card and a note for $1,000 because I told myself a mother gives with both hands on her child's wedding day. In my head, I could see the picture that would never exist, me in that dress, standing beside my son, not front and center, not stealing a scene, just there, present, seen. For 3 years, I helped them every month. It began with rent, a simple number, $500 like clockwork. When groceries ran low, I would bring bags and say it was nothing because it felt small compared to the love I thought we shared. When they moved, I bought the living room set because they said the old one hurt their backs. When she said she needed personal expenses to feel ready for wedding planning, I gave $800 and told her not to worry. I tried not to keep a ledger in my head because I believed love does not need a receipt, but memory keeps numbers even when you pretend it doesn't. After she told me their big news, I did the polite thing. I asked about the ceremony, the location, the witnesses, like I was someone who just loves weddings in general. She explained it like it was a little picnic you do by accident. Very intimate, very small. Her voice was sweet and flat at the same time, the way someone speaks to a clerk or a stranger they need nothing from. My son nodded, like he was following a script that had been typed and handed to him that morning. I did not argue, I nodded. My mouth moved the way a mouth moves when it is trying to be kind. "Congratulations, I hope it was beautiful, I hope you felt loved." The words felt like dry toast, like something you eat because you have to, not because you want it. They left after 20 minutes. 20 minutes can hold an entire year if you sit inside each second. When the door closed, the quiet fell like dust. It took me about an hour to make the mistake everyone makes these days. I opened social media. I told myself I was not looking for anything, just checking. But the photos found me anyway. There they were, both of them standing under strings of little white lights. There were flowers, there were toasts. Her mother wore a blue dress that matched her earrings. Her father's hand was on my son's shoulder. Her siblings held champagne like a silver chorus. The captions were shiny with words about family, forever, and the people who matter most. I scrolled until I reached the part where my heart stepped back and said, "I need a chair." I closed the app, then opened it again like maybe there had been a mistake and I would suddenly appear in the frame on the second try. I did not appear. I walked into my bedroom and touched the sleeve of the pink dress like it could speak. It said nothing. Fabric keeps secrets well. If this was a movie, maybe I would smash a vase or throw the dress in the trash. But real life is slower and smaller. I made tea. I sat with the cup in both hands because the warmth was the only thing that did not change that day. I tried to be reasonable with myself. I said maybe they wanted to save money. Maybe they wanted something with less pressure. Maybe I'm hard to plan around. Maybe I am sentimental and weddings are not. I listed reasons the way you list medicine on a form, like checking boxes could fix the ache. It did not. I went to the hall closet and pulled out a plastic tub where I keep old envelopes, gift bags, and ribbons. I had saved the receipt for the shoes. I held it. I put it back. I opened the little envelope with the card I had written. "To a life filled with kindness," I had written, and I had underlined kindness, not love, because love is easy to say and kindness is hard to do. I took out the cash and put it back in my wallet. I left the empty card on the kitchen table and stared at it like it was a person who had something to explain. I tried to sleep, and when I could not, I counted the months the way people count sheep. Except my sheep had rent and groceries and gas and new tires and pharmacy runs and "can you help just this once" on their backs. 36 months. 500 times 36 is 18,000. 200 for groceries most months, sometimes more, that's another 7,000 and change. A couch is not a small thing. A repair bill is not a small thing when you are retired and the money you have is not growing. I did not add it all the way up because I was not ready to see the full number. I turned off the light and lay there in the dark with my eyes open, which is different from being awake and also the same. In the morning, the world did not end. The sun came in like it always does, reckless and cheerful, landing on the same table where I had once wrapped birthday gifts and where I had set out plates for people who were always staying for dinner at the last minute. I made coffee. It tasted like coffee. I sat down with my cup in the envelope with no money in it, and I listened to the house. Houses speak when they are finally allowed to be quiet. Mine said, "Are you ready to tell the truth?" The truth is simple to say and hard to hold. I was not invited because I was not useful that day. I was useful the days that hurt less, the days with rent due, with bills due, with could you cover it and I'll pay you back, in a message that never got a reply after I said sure. On the wedding day, I was a problem to manage, a person with feelings, a mother with a face that might show something real. They did not want that in their photos. They wanted a clean story. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. I let it buzz. It is hard to let a thing ring without answering, but it is harder to answer and pretend you do not mind. I poured the coffee into a travel mug and stepped outside. The air was cool enough to be kind. I walked around the block because I did not want to sit still with this new shape of my life yet. When I came back, I opened the closet and moved the pink dress to the back, behind winter coats and a box of old blankets. I did not throw it away. It is possible that one day I will wear it to something else, something that is mine. It is also possible it will sit there and teach me a lesson every time I see a corner of it. By noon, the shock had thinned and a different feeling took its place. It was small like a match head, but it was hot. I did not give it a name. Names make things official, and I was not ready for official. I made a list on a sticky note of errands I needed to run this week. At the bottom, without thinking, I wrote, "No more automatic help." I looked at the words. I put the sticky note under a magnet on the fridge. I stood there a long time, as if the small square could hold me up. I did not make any big moves that day. I did not cancel anything. I did not call anyone to announce a new policy for my life. I did something smaller. I took the spare keys I had given them years ago and set them on the table. I said out loud to the empty room, "These do not feel like love anymore." The room did not answer, but I felt lighter by the smallest amount. Sometimes change does not roar. Sometimes it is a single breath you finally let yourself take, and then another, until the air in the room belongs to you again. Imagine finding out your only son got married without you and being told you were special enough to be invited. What would your very first reaction be? Speech balloon, drop your honest reaction in the comments. I'd love to see how you would handle it. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe. The sticky note on my fridge sat there like it was glowing. 3 little words written in my own shaky handwriting: no more automatic help. I stared at it for a long time, and the more I looked, the more memories began to flood me. Every little payment I had made for them replayed in my mind like a slideshow, each one dressed up as love, but each one taking a piece of me. I thought back to the very first time I paid their rent. They had just moved in together. My son called and said they were short. "Just for this month, Mom," he promised. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can." I said, of course. What mother would let her child face eviction? I told myself it was temporary. That was 3 years ago. $500 every month. At first, I didn't notice, but 36 months later, the number stared back at me like a debt collector. $18,000, that was almost half of my savings account drained by a couple who told me I wasn't special. Groceries were the next memory. Bags of rice, meat, milk, fruits, even cleaning supplies. At least $200 most months, sometimes more when Lena wanted certain brands or healthy options. I remembered walking through the supermarket, filling a cart, telling myself it's okay, this is what family does. That okay cost me another $7,000 over time. Then the furniture, their sofa, their coffee table, their dining chairs. The day we delivered the set, Lena had smiled wide and said, "This feels like a real home now." She never said thank you, not once. I told myself it was fine. Gratitude wasn't important, but deep down I waited for those 2 words and they never came. The car loan, the medical bills, even an air conditioner repair because it was too hot in the summer and they couldn't sleep. Each memory carried a dollar sign in my head, and the total kept climbing until I finally admitted it. I had spent over $33,400 in 3 years. You know what $33,400 could mean for a retired woman living alone? That was 2 dream vacations to Europe, the kind I had always promised myself after working 40 years straight. That was a new kitchen I had wanted for a decade. That was freedom. Instead, it became rent receipts, grocery bags, and a wedding dress I didn't even get to see. The more I thought about it, the more angry I became, not only at them but at myself. I had allowed it. I had kept saying yes when my heart was screaming no. I had traded my dignity for their approval, and they had shown me exactly how much that approval was worth: nothing. And just as I was sitting there, feeling that anger finally build into something sharp instead of soft, the phone rang again. The screen lit up with Lena's name. I almost laughed. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up, and when I answered, I didn't even say hello. She spoke quickly, her voice high and panicked. "Renate, the landlord is pressuring us. The rent is overdue. He says if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." Her words were so casual, like it was normal for me to hand over money every month. She actually said you forgot, as if paying their bills was my official job. For a moment, I said nothing. I wanted her to feel the silence. And then I spoke slowly, calmly, with a kind of strength I didn't even know I had. Lena, I said, did I tell you once I only help special people? The line went quiet, dead quiet. I could hear her breathing, sharp and shallow. She stammered, Renate, I don't understand. What do you mean? You understand very well, I replied. I wasn't special enough to be invited to my own son's wedding, so now you're not special enough to receive my money. She tried to laugh it off, tried to switch to that sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. Oh, come on, don't be like that. You've always been like a second mother to me. You know we love you. I almost dropped the phone from the weight of the lie. Love, I repeated. You love my bank account, you love my transfers, but me, you left me sitting at home in a pink dress waiting for a wedding that already happened. Her voice cracked. Please, this isn't fair. We're your family. Family doesn't treat each other like this, I said firmly. Goodbye, Lena. I hung up before she could answer, and when the line went dead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. But peace doesn't last long when you've been someone's ATM. Within minutes, the calls began again. First Lena, then my son, then both, over and over, like they thought persistence could wear me down. I put the phone face down and walked away. For the rest of that day, I thought about what had just happened. Part of me felt guilty, the mother part, the voice that says, he's still your boy, you should take care of him. But another part of me, the part that had been buried under years of guilt and obligation, whispered something else. You deserve respect. You deserve peace. You deserve your own life. I looked again at the sticky note on my fridge. No more automatic help. This time it didn't look shaky, it looked strong. That night I did what I had avoided doing for 3 years. I opened my bank statements, every single one. I highlighted every transfer, every payment, every check I had written to them. My pen scratched across the paper and I added it all up, line by line. When I reached the total $33,400, I put the pen down and stared at the number until my eyes blurred. I whispered out loud, never again. It was the first promise I had made to myself in years, and I knew I was going to keep it. But what I didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. Saying no once would not be the end. They would not accept my boundaries easily. They would push harder, fight dirtier, and come back in ways I never could have imagined. And I, for the first time in decades, was ready to fight back. The next morning, I thought maybe the storm had passed. I had ignored the calls. I had said no for the first time. I felt a new kind of strength in my chest, but strength has a price, and I was about to see just how far they would go to get back what they thought was theirs. By early afternoon, I came home from a short walk. 3 cars were parked outside my house. My stomach dropped before I even recognized them. One was my son's, one was Lena's, and the third I didn't know. I froze for a second on the sidewalk. I could see movement through the curtains. People were inside my house. That's when it hit me. They still had keys. I had given them spare keys years ago, back when I believed trust was permanent. My hands shook as I turned my own key in the lock and opened the door. The scene inside stopped me cold. My son was sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands, like a boy caught doing something wrong. Lena was packing the living room like an animal in a cage, and at my dining table, a table where I had once served birthday cakes and holiday dinners, sat a man in a gray suit, calmly flipping through my private papers. I raised my voice louder than I expected. What is going on here? They all looked up, and for a moment I swear they acted like I was the intruder in my own home. Lena was the first to speak, rushing over with that fake warmth she had mastered. Renate, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher from the law firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? I asked, my voice flat. My son finally lifted his head. His eyes didn't look like regret or apology, they looked like desperation. Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled the transfers. Mr. Fisher is here to help us sort things out. We're worried about you. I turned my attention to the stranger at my table. He stood up with a smooth smile and held out his hand. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your well-being and asked me to review your case. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked straight to the table and started gathering my papers, my bank statements, my bills, my personal letters that he had been flipping through without permission. "These are my private documents," I said, my voice sharp. "You have no right to look at them." "Mom," my son interrupted in that condescending tone I had started to recognize too well, "we're worried. Your behavior lately has been strange. First, you cut us off financially without explanation. Then you don't answer our calls. We think maybe you need professional help." I almost laughed. Professional help, that was their new angle. Lena reached for my hand, trying to soften me with her honeyed tone. "Renate, sweetheart, maybe the stress is too much. At your age, loneliness can make things confusing. We just want to support you." Confusion, stress, loneliness, the words hung in the air like smoke, and then it clicked. They weren't here to apologize, they weren't here to understand, they were here to build a case against me, to make me look unstable, to make me sign something. Mr. Fisher cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table toward me. "Mrs. Richter, this is a simple document, a power of attorney. It would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances temporarily just until you're feeling better." I didn't even open it. I picked up the folder, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in without hesitation. The sound of paper hitting plastic was louder than any scream. "The only transition happening here," I said, "is yours to the front door. Get out of my house." For a second, the room froze. Then Lena's voice cracked into tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration. "You can't do this to us, Renate. We've been counting on you. We made plans. We have bills." "Bills based on my money," I shot back. "Not on your own work, not on your own responsibility, my money, and I have decided I'm done." My son stood, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with a kind of anger I had only seen in him as a child when he didn't get his way. "Mom, you can't just cut us off. We have obligations. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't walk away now." "I can," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "And I will. For years, I've carried your obligations on my back while you treated me like an ATM with feelings. No more." Mr. Fisher packed his briefcase slowly, clearly used to families like mine. Before leaving, he said in a calm, professional tone, "Mrs. Richter, this is not over. If your family believes you're no longer able to manage your affairs, they have legal options. A judge could determine you need guardianship." Guardianship, the word felt like a slap. They wanted to declare me incompetent, to take control of my life, my money, my freedom. I looked him straight in the eye. "Mr. Fisher, I have managed my finances for 40 years, raised a son alone, buried a husband, and supported 2 adults who treat me like trash. I am clearer today than I have ever been. If anyone needs help, it isn't me." They left eventually, storming out with the wounded pride of people who aren't used to hearing no. Before he walked out, my son turned back. His words were meant to scare me. "Mom, this is going to end badly for you. You'll end up alone with no one to take care of you." I felt a deep sadness in my chest, but my voice was steady. "I am already alone, Max. The difference is now it's by choice, not by neglect." When the door finally closed behind them, my house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel heavy, but light, free. I sat down in the very chair where that lawyer had been reading my papers and felt something wash over me, anger, yes, but also clarity. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about dignity. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. If they thought they could bully me, declare me incompetent, and strip me of the only independence I had left, they were wrong. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of fear this time, but because of adrenaline. My mind was racing, not with what ifs, but with what next. For the first time in years, I was planning not how to save them, but how to save myself. Tomorrow, I promised myself, would be the beginning of my new life. And if they wanted a war over my freedom, then a war is what they would get. I woke up the next morning before the sun had even risen. My body was tired, but my mind was sharp, like I had been drinking strong coffee all night. The lawyer's words, my son's threats, Lena's fake tears, all of it played in my head like a broken record. But instead of making me feel weak, it made me feel clear. If they wanted to fight me for my own life, I needed to stop playing soft. For years, I had thought being quiet and helpful was the way to keep peace. Now I saw it had only made me easy to control. They had grown so used to my silence that the first no I gave shook their entire world. And that told me one thing: no was my weapon and I had to keep using it. The first stop was the bank. Walking into that building felt like stepping into a battlefield. For 3 years I had walked in with my head down, quietly authorizing transfers that drained my savings. I knew the tellers by name. They had watched me send thousands to my son and his wife like it was nothing, but this time was different. Mr. Klein, the branch manager, had been there the entire time. He saw me and waved, his face warm, not like someone who wanted my money, but like someone who genuinely knew me. "Mrs. Richter," he said, "what can I do for you today?" I sat down across from him, and for the first time in years I spoke with authority. "Mr. Klein, I need to cancel every automatic transfer linked to my account, and I want to set up protections so nobody else can access my money." He raised his eyebrows. "Are you sure? These transfers have been regular for years." "Yes," I said firmly, "I am very sure. What happened is that I finally opened my eyes." For a moment he just looked at me and then he nodded slowly. "Good, it's about time, let's fix this." As he typed into his computer, my phone buzzed again and again in my purse. Max, Lena, Max again. It was like they could sense I was cutting the rope they'd been hanging onto. I ignored every vibration. When Mr. Klein handed me the confirmation papers, I felt like I had set down a load of bricks I'd been carrying for years. "Mrs. Richter," he said quietly, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in all the years I've seen you come here, I've never seen you look this certain you're doing the right thing." I almost cried right there in his office. A man who knew me only as a customer showed me more care than my own son. I thanked him, put the papers in my bag, and walked out of the bank taller than I had walked in. The second step was security. My son and Lena had already broken into my home once, armed with a lawyer and a folder full of lies. What was to stop them from doing it again? They had keys, they had nerve, and I had been too trusting. So I went to the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years. Usually I was there buying things for Max and Lena, tools for their apartment, supplies for their endless emergencies. When I walked in, he smiled. "Mrs. Richter, what brings you here today? Another fix for your son's place?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No, Mr. Summer, this time it's for my house. I need all my locks changed, and I want the best quality you've got." He looked surprised, but he didn't ask questions. He simply nodded. "We'll get you set up." As I was paying, his son Ethan came in. He installs security systems. I hadn't planned on cameras, but when I saw him, it felt like fate. "Ethan," I said, "do you install surveillance systems too? Full ones with alerts to the police?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Then I want one as soon as possible. Price doesn't matter." For years, I had told myself I didn't need to spend money on myself. I always thought better save it for Max, better keep it for Lena. But now I was buying peace of mind, and I realized this was the best money I could ever spend. The third step came unexpectedly. As I walked out of the store, my phone rang again. This time it was Max's number. It was Lena, either. It was a number I didn't recognize. For a moment I thought it might be important, so I answered. "Renate," Lena's voice came through, sweet but strained. "Please don't hang up. We need to talk like adults." "Speak," I said flatly. She hesitated. "Listen, I know you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake, okay? We should have invited you. We want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner at your house, just us, to celebrate our wedding with you?" I almost laughed. "At my house, where you can go through my things again?" "No," she said quickly, "just dinner like we used to, cook together, talk, please." I cut her off. "Lena, how much rent do you owe?" The silence told me everything. Finally, she whispered, 2 months, $1,000 total. "There it is," I said. "This isn't about dinner, this isn't about family, this is about money." Her voice cracked again. "We miss you, Renate, you're important to us." If I was so important, I snapped, why was I important enough to stand by my son at his wedding? Why wasn't I important enough for one single call that didn't end in you asking me for money? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew the truth. "Lena," I said, my voice colder than I thought I could make it, "for 3 years you've treated me like an ATM with feelings. That ends today. Don't call me again." I hung up. That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I went to the beauty salon. Every time before, I had canceled my appointments because Max or Lena had an emergency. I would take the money I had saved for myself and hand it to them without thinking, but not this time. Mrs. Richter, my stylist Cynthia said, "What a surprise, I thought you had forgotten us." "I didn't forget you," I said, "I forgot myself." For the next 2 hours, I let her cut my hair, color it, do my nails. I listened as she talked about her kids, her dreams, her little stories about daily life. For the first time in years, I was in a conversation that wasn't about someone begging me for money. When she turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. "You look beautiful," she said, "but more than that, you look free." She was right. When I walked out of that salon, my steps were lighter. For years, every dollar I spent on myself had felt like guilt. Now, every dollar I had saved from not giving to them felt like power. And for the first time in decades, I was ready to spend that power on me. If you were in Renate's shoes, what's the very first thing you'd do after cutting off toxic family members? Change the locks, block their number, or treat yourself to something you deserve? Speech balloon, tell me your answer in the comments. I'm really curious how you would protect yourself. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can follow the next part of Renate's journey. For a few days after I cut them off, the silence in my house felt almost holy. I drank my coffee in peace. I read the newspaper without dread. The phone still buzzed, but I had learned a new skill ignoring it. Every missed call was like a little medal pinned on my chest, proof that I was finally standing up for myself. But abusers don't disappear when their source of comfort is threatened. They fight harder. And soon, Max and Lena stopped calling as children begging their mother. They started fighting as if I were an enemy holding their inheritance hostage. It was a Friday morning when the knock came, not a neighborly knock, a sharp, official-sounding one. Through the window, I saw a young woman in a crisp suit holding a folder against her chest. Her smile was professional, not friendly. My stomach dropped before she even spoke. "Good morning, Mrs. Richter," she said. "I'm Mrs. Schmidt, a social worker with the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report that you may be at risk and I need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. A report from who? I didn't have to ask. I forced my voice to stay calm. "May I see your ID?" She showed it. It looked real. I let her in because refusing would only make things worse. She sat down in my living room, the same one where Lena had once sprawled out like a queen on the sofa I bought her, and opened her folder. "Mrs. Richter," she began, "we've been told you've shown significant changes in your financial behavior. You've stopped supporting your family without explanation. You've cut off communication. You've installed unnecessary security systems. And you've refused medical and legal help from your loved ones." Each phrase was a dagger carefully chosen to paint me as unstable. I could almost hear Lena's voice behind the words. Unnecessary security, refused help, cut off family. It was a script and Mrs. Schmidt was reading it line by line. I took a deep breath. "Miss Schmidt, I would like to call my lawyer before I answer anything." Her smile tightened. "Ma'am, this is just a wellness check, not a legal interrogation. If you have nothing to hide, it should be fine to talk." That sentence made my blood boil. "If you have nothing to hide." I had heard that kind of manipulation before from Lena herself. I stood up. "I will not answer another question without my lawyer present. You're welcome to wait here or you can return another day." And then I called Mr. Weber. Within 20 minutes, he was standing in my doorway, tall and firm, his briefcase snapping open like a weapon. When he saw the social worker, his face hardened. "Miss Schmidt, do you have a court order for this visit?" She blinked. "No, just a report from concerned family members." "Concerned?" Mr. Weber's voice was ice. "You mean the same family that excluded her from their wedding while taking $33,000 from her? The same family that broke into her house with a lawyer to pressure her into signing power of attorney? That family." She shuffled her papers, her confidence slipping. "We have to take all reports seriously." "Then take this seriously," Mr. Weber said, pulling a folder from his case. "Every transfer, every grocery purchase, every emergency payment she made over 3 years documented. That's financial exploitation. A federal crime. What my client has done, installing locks, canceling transfers, protecting herself, is not paranoia, it's survival." Miss Schmidt looked at me, then at the papers, then back at him. Mrs. Richter, do you manage your finances yourself? Yes, I said clearly. I can show you every statement, every bill is paid on time, my taxes are up to date. Do you live independently? Yes, I cook, I clean, I drive my own car, I even garden. Come look at my pantry if you want, it's organized better than a supermarket aisle. Do you take any medication? Just vitamins and aspirin. Mr. Weber added, she has recently undergone medical exams, she's in excellent condition. The social worker closed her folder, her shoulders softening. Based on what I've seen and what's been provided, I find no indication that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I'll be closing this case. When she left, Mr. Weber stayed a moment longer. Renate, he said gently, this won't be the last time. They're desperate. Desperate people don't stop. You need to be prepared for more. I nodded. For the first time, I truly believed it. That evening, I called my sister Diana. When I told her what happened, she was furious. Do you see, Renate? They're willing to destroy your reputation just to keep your money flowing. They're not your family anymore. They're predators. Her words stung, but I knew they were true. Later that night, I sat with my neighbor Alina, the one who had heard the shouting days before. I told her about the wellness check, about Lena's lies, about the way my own son had sat silently while his wife planned my downfall. Alina shook her head slowly. My daughter tried the same thing 5 years ago, she said. She called social services on me because I wouldn't pay her debts anymore. They all read from the same book, Renate. Chapter 1, make you feel guilty. Chapter 2, say you're confused. Chapter 3, try to take control legally. We both laughed bitterly. It was true. It was almost like they had studied a manual. But then she took my hand. The difference is you're fighting back and you're not alone. Her words lit something inside me. For years, I had felt like I was drowning in their demands, isolated, invisible. But now I had allies. I had a lawyer. I had a sister who spoke truth. I had a neighbor who understood. For the first time in years, I had a team. That night, I wrote in a notebook, document everything, every visit, every call, every knock on the door. I logged the time, the date, the details. If they wanted a war of paperwork and accusations, then I would fight with the truth as my weapon. The next morning, my cameras showed me something strange. Max's car driving slowly past my house, then again in the evening. And the next day, sometimes Lena was with him, sometimes not. They didn't knock, didn't call, just circled like vultures waiting for weakness. I wrote down every pass. Mr. Weber had told me, persistence will work in our favor. Every unwanted visit strengthens our case for a restraining order. For once, their harassment was helping me. And while they wasted their time plotting against me, I was learning something new every day, how to live for myself. After the wellness check ended in my favor, I realized something important. I could not just defend myself each time they attacked. I needed to build my own wall of evidence, a fortress of facts so strong that no lie could break through it. If Max and Lena wanted to drag me into court, I was going to make sure the truth crushed them. The first thing Mr. Weber told me was clear. Renate, we need documentation. Every dollar, every conversation, every attempt at manipulation. You've already started keeping a log. Good, now we need proof of your competence and we need witnesses. Witnesses? That word made me pause. For years, I had lived in silence. I didn't tell people about the money I gave Max and Lena. I pretended to friends that everything was fine. I bragged to my sister about how helpful I was, never admitting the weight I carried. My silence had been their weapon, but now my voice would be mine. Mr. Weber arranged for me to meet Dr. Moore, a cognitive specialist. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes but a kind smile. Mrs. Richter, she said gently, I'm going to ask you questions, give you some tests, and see how your mind is working. It's nothing to be afraid of. For 2 hours, she tested me. Memory questions, math problems, logical puzzles. She asked about my finances, my decisions, my daily life. And when it was over, she leaned back and smiled. Mrs. Richter, your results are excellent. You're not only competent, you're above average for your age. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. Her written report was gold, hard evidence, not feelings, not opinions, facts. Then came the witnesses. One by one, I began telling the truth to people around me. It was strange at first, like opening a door that had been locked for years. but each time I spoke, the shame got smaller and the strength got bigger. I started with Alina, my neighbor. She didn't hesitate for a second. "I'll testify for you, Renate. I've seen you clearer these past weeks than ever before. Anyone can see you're not confused. You're finally free." Then Cynthia, my hairstylist, who had seen me cancel appointment after appointment because of emergencies. She promised to tell the court how I had come back to life once I stopped handing my money away. "You're sharper than half the women half your age who sit in my chair," she said. Mr. Summer, the hardware store owner, agreed too. "I'll say exactly what I saw, a woman who made a clear decision to protect herself. No hesitation, no confusion." Even my pharmacist, Mr. Green, offered to put his statement in writing. He admitted how Lena had tricked him into signing a vague paper about my irregular medication purchases. "I'll correct it," he told me, his face red with shame. "I'll write that you only buy vitamins and aspirin and that you're perfectly responsible." Piece by piece, I was building my army. But it wasn't just about outside witnesses. I needed to face myself too. One night, I sat down at my kitchen table with a stack of papers, my checkbook, my bank statements, and a blank binder. On the cover, I wrote in black marker, "My life." Inside, I made sections: rent payments, groceries, furniture, loans, medical help, every check, every receipt, every online transfer. I printed it all. The numbers were harsh: $33,400 in 3 years. I taped in copies of messages where Lena had begged, "Just this once." I added notes about conversations where Max had promised, "We'll pay you back," promises that never came true. It felt like putting together a puzzle, except the picture wasn't beautiful. It was ugly, raw, undeniable. But it was real. And for the first time, the truth was on my side, not hidden under guilt. Mr. Weber flipped through the binder when I brought it to him. He whistled softly. "Renate, this is powerful. Courts like numbers, courts like dates. This isn't just your word, it's proof. You've done more work than most clients ever manage." That night, I lay in bed and thought about how strange life was. For years, I thought love meant keeping quiet. Now, love for myself meant speaking louder than ever. But while I was building my case, Max and Lena weren't sitting still. The cameras I had installed caught them driving by again and again, sometimes slowing down, sometimes parking for a few minutes, sometimes even arguing in the car. They thought I wasn't watching. But every time I wrote down the date, the time, the license plate. Each note went into the binder. Each entry was another nail in the coffin of their lies. One evening, Alina came over with coffee. She sat with me while I updated the log. "You know," she said, "what you're doing is bigger than just protecting yourself. You're setting an example. There are so many women like us who give and give until there's nothing left. They need to know it's possible to stop." Her words touched me deeply. For the first time in a long time, I realized this wasn't just my fight. It was the fight of every parent, every elder, every person who had been drained by family obligations until they had nothing left. And strangely, that gave me strength. The next week, Mr. Weber called me into his office. "Renate," he said, "they've filed the paperwork. Max and Lena are officially suing you for incompetence. They want guardianship over your finances." I felt the air leave my lungs. Even though I knew it was coming, hearing it out loud was terrifying. Guardianship meant losing everything. My house, my money, my independence. They wanted to lock me in a cage while they spent what was mine. But then I remembered Dr. Moore's report. I remembered the binder. I remembered Alina's promise to testify. Instead of crying, I nodded. "Then let's go to court, I'm ready." Mr. Weber smiled. "That's the spirit. Remember, the burden of proof is on them. All we have to do is show the truth. And Renate, you have the truth on your side." That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by my binder, my notes, my allies' promises. I whispered to myself, "They may see me as old, they may see me as weak, but I am not powerless. I am prepared." It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my dignity, my freedom, my very right to live as myself. Max and Lena thought they were preparing to strip me of everything, but what they didn't know was that I had already built something they could never touch: my will to fight back. And when the day came, I would walk into that courtroom not as a victim, but as a woman who had finally remembered her worth. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm I had been watching crawl across the horizon for weeks. I woke up before dawn, dressed in my best black suit, and stared at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who used to transfer $500 at the first tearful phone call. This woman's eyes were sharper, her back was straighter, she was ready. Mr. Weber arrived at 7:00 a.m. sharp, his briefcase clutched like a shield. "Renate," he said, "today isn't just about proving competence. It's about reclaiming your dignity. Remember, they have to prove you're incapable, you just have to be yourself." We drove in silence. At the courthouse, my stomach turned when I saw them, Max in a new suit, probably bought with someone else's money, and Lena in black like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was, though not the kind she expected. She looked at me with a coldness that could freeze glass. My son avoided my eyes. Their lawyer was older, polished, with the smugness of a man used to twisting stories until they snapped into the shape he wanted. He greeted Mr. Weber like an equal, then gave me a brief, pitying smile. That smile said everything. "Poor, confused woman, this will be easy." The courtroom filled slowly, the air heavy with whispers. When the judge walked in, the room hushed like someone had thrown a blanket over it. Judge Miller, stern, silver-haired, known for being fair but unsparing. His eyes moved across the room and landed on me. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of kindness, but then his face was stone again. The proceedings began with their lawyer's opening statement. His voice was calm, almost tender, as if he were doing me a favor. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is about a woman we all love. Mrs. Richter has been a generous mother and mother-in-law, but lately her behavior shows alarming decline. She abruptly cut off financial support for her family without explanation. She's installed paranoid security systems. She's isolated herself under the influence of new acquaintances who may be exploiting her. Her son and daughter-in-law only want to protect her." Every word was carefully designed to turn my strength into sickness. My no became confusion, my cameras became paranoia, my allies became manipulators. Then came their witnesses. First was Lena. She sat down and began her performance, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Renate has always been like a second mother to me," she said, dabbing at her eyes. "Seeing her decline has been heartbreaking. She used to be so warm, now she won't even answer our calls. She talks about us like we're enemies. It's like she's not herself anymore." Her tears glistened under the courtroom lights. If I hadn't known her, I might have believed her. Mr. Weber stood for cross-examination, his questions cut like a knife. "Mrs. Schuster," he said, "when was the last time you called my client without asking for money?" Lena blinked. "We always talked about many things." "A date, please, just one example." She stammered, I can't remember." "Is it true," he pressed, "that you and your husband got married without inviting my client?" "It was a very small ceremony." "Is it also true that when she asked about it, you told her, quote, 'We only invited special people'?" Her face flushed crimson. "That was taken out of context." "What context," Mr. Weber asked smoothly, "makes it acceptable to tell your husband's mother she isn't special enough for his wedding?" The courtroom murmured. Lena looked down, silent. Next was Max. Seeing my son swear to tell the truth before sitting in that chair was one of the hardest moments of my life. "My mom has always been generous," he said. "But recently she's been erratic, cutting us off, accusing us of using her, saying terrible things. We're worried she's being manipulated by others." Mr. Weber rose again. "Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" "I don't know the exact amount," Max muttered. "Would $33,400 sound correct?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe she was generous." "And how many times in those years did you visit her without asking for money?" Silence. "Is it also true," Weber continued, "that you and your wife entered her home without permission, accompanied by a lawyer, and attempted to have her sign a power of attorney?" Max's jaw tightened. "We were trying to help." "At 35 years old, do you require your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent, car, and credit cards for you to survive?" The silence was louder this time. Their other witnesses followed. Mr. Davis, the neighbor who hated my cameras, called me paranoid for installing them, but under questioning he admitted he had never spoken to me directly, only observed from across the street. Dr. Lehman, a doctor they had somehow convinced to testify, said my refusal to undergo their psychiatric exam was proof of decline. But Mr. Weber countered with Dr. Moore's official evaluation. My cognition was not only intact, it was excellent. Then it was our turn. First, Mr. Green, the pharmacist. His face was red with regret as he admitted Lena had tricked him into signing a misleading statement. In truth, he said, Mrs. Richter only purchases vitamins and aspirin. She's never shown confusion here. I regret my earlier mistake. Then Dr. Moore herself presenting her detailed report. Mrs. Richter's results are outstanding. She is mentally competent, financially literate, and emotionally stable. Any suggestion otherwise is false. Mr. Summer from the hardware store testified about my clear, rational decision to change locks and install cameras. She wasn't confused, he said simply. She was protecting herself. Cynthia, my stylist, spoke warmly. She canceled appointments for years because of her family's emergencies. When she came back, she was sharp, decisive, and joyful. She's not declining, she's thriving. Finally, Alina and my garden club friends. One by one, they described me as alert, independent, engaged. They spoke of dinners, conversations, and laughter. Their words painted me not as a frail old woman, but as a reborn one. Then it was my turn. I stood, walked to the stand, and raised my hand. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber said gently, why did you decide to stop financially supporting your son and daughter-in-law? I looked at the judge, not at Max. Because I finally realized what I was getting wasn't love, it was a transaction. My money was welcome, I was not. When they married without me, it became clear I was only an ATM with feelings. I chose to stop. Do you regret your decision? I only regret that it took me so long to make it, I said firmly. Their lawyer tried to rattle me. He asked rapid-fire questions, trying to make me stumble. But every answer came clean. When he suggested my new friends had manipulated me, I smiled. For the first time in years, I have relationships built on respect, not on money. That's not manipulation, that's freedom. In closing, their lawyer pleaded that I was confused and exploited. But Mr. Weber's rebuttal was devastating. Your Honor, the plaintiffs have offered no medical proof of incompetence. What they've shown is frustration because their source of income has chosen to protect herself. This is not about care, this is about greed. Judge Miller left to deliberate. 2 hours felt like 2 years. My hands trembled not from fear but from the weight of waiting. When he returned, the courtroom held its breath. After reviewing the evidence, he said, his voice clear, it is obvious Mrs. Richter is fully competent. Professional evaluations confirm her mental clarity. Her financial decisions are rational. The plaintiff's motivations appear financial, not protective. The request for guardianship is denied. The words washed over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. Denied, I had won. Lena's face twisted with hatred. Max looked at me with something that might have been regret, but it was too late. Their lawyer packed up quickly, clearly defeated. I walked out of that courthouse not as a victim, not as an old woman stripped of power, but as a woman who had fought for her life, and won. And as the doors closed behind me, I knew one thing for certain: the battle for my freedom was over. The future was mine. When the courthouse doors closed behind me that day, the sound echoed in my chest. It wasn't just the end of a case, it was the end of 3 long years of being drained, used, humiliated. I walked out into the sunlight with Mr. Weber by my side, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed like a free woman. Outside, Max and Lena stood huddled with their lawyer, their faces twisted in anger. Lena glared at me like I had stolen something from her. Maybe I had her endless supply of free money. Max didn't look at me directly, but I saw the way his fists clenched. His last words to me before storming away still echo in my mind. Mom, this will end badly for you. You'll end up alone. But the truth hit me harder than his threat. I had already been alone, even when they were around. The difference now was that my solitude wasn't forced, it was chosen. That makes all the difference in the world. The next days were quiet, almost unnervingly so. The phone that once rang nonstop was silent. No calls, no texts, just peace. But peace can be loud when you're not used to it. At first, I kept expecting the storm to come back, another knock, another scheme, another attempt to break me down, but it didn't. Instead, I decided to do something bold. 3 months after the hearing, I sold my house. That house had been filled with too many ghosts, memories of late-night transfers, visits from lawyers, Lena's fake smiles on my sofa. It was mine, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I wanted a fresh start. I bought a bright apartment in the city center, smaller yes, but filled with sunlight. From my balcony I could see people walking, laughing, living. I wasn't tucked away, waiting for the next emergency call. I was in the middle of life again. And with the money I had left, I did two things. First, I donated half to organizations that fight elder abuse and financial exploitation, because what had happened to me wasn't rare, it was happening everywhere in silence. I wanted to help break that silence for others. Second, I promised myself the rest was mine, for me, to live, not just survive. So I traveled. At 72, I finally boarded a plane to Europe. I stood in front of the Eiffel Tower with my heart pounding, thinking I could have done this years ago if I hadn't been paying someone else's rent. I wandered through Rome, ate gelato on cobbled streets, sat on park benches in Paris sketching strangers. Everywhere I went, I carried not guilt but joy. When I came home, I filled my days with things I had once put away for later. I started painting again. I joined a volunteer group that visited lonely seniors in nursing homes. I cooked meals just for myself, meals that weren't rushed or budgeted for someone else's appetite. And sometimes on quiet evenings, Alina and I would sit on my balcony with glasses of wine, laughing about things that had nothing to do with courtrooms or money. Max and Lena never called again, not once. At first, that stung. I thought maybe after the dust settled, Max would come to me not as a son wanting money but as a son wanting his mother. But silence stretched into weeks, then months, and eventually I understood they hadn't lost me. They had lost their access to me, and for them that was all I had ever been worth. Through the grapevine, I heard they had to move into a smaller apartment. Lena, for the first time in her life, found a job. Max picked up extra shifts. They were finally living within their means. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of standing on your own 2 feet. One night, as I watered my balcony plants, I thought of my late husband, Robert. I whispered to him like I used to at his grave. "You'd be proud of me," I said. "It took me too long, but I finally learned. I stopped letting them use what you worked so hard to leave me. I stopped confusing money with love." The stars looked brighter than they had in years. And that's when it hit me, the real lesson in all of this. For so long I believed I had to buy love. I thought if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, provided enough, then maybe I would be seen, valued, cherished. But love doesn't have a price tag. Real love is not earned by payments, it's given freely without condition. What Max and Lena gave me was never love, it was dependence dressed as affection. The love I needed most, I finally gave to myself. When people ask me now if I regret it, if I regret cutting them off, going to court, selling my house, starting over at 72, I tell them the truth. The only regret I have is not doing it sooner. Because freedom tastes sweeter than guilt, independence feels lighter than obligation. And being alone with peace is better than being surrounded by people who only want what you can give. My name is Renate. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned the most important truth: the most special person in my life has to be me. If you were in Renate's place, would you cut them off completely, or would you give them one last chance? What would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. I always read them, and I love hearing different perspectives. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more true life and revenge stories like this one.